So this is my audience.
Oh.
Okay. Mike doesn't want to turn around. Okay. So every 13 seconds, an animal has been euthanized in a kill shelter. On October 18th, 2016, a friend of mine came up to me and showed me a picture of this dog. I asked her what's so special about this dog. She told me that he lives on the streets in Kansas, and if no one decides to take him, he will be hours away from getting euthanized. My friend and her family decided to adopt the little guy and named him Finn, and this is a picture of what he looks like today. But this is what could have happened to Finn if no one decided to take him.
You killed your dog?
So, I gathered all of my information from various websites on the internet, such as the Washington Post and the humanesociety.org. I also got my information from a book called The Myth of Pet Overpopulation and the No-Kill Revolution in America, written by Nathan J. Winograd. So let's start talking about the history of these kill shelters and how they originated. The first American Humane Society was first opened in 1866. And this is also known as the ASPCA. Now, when this organization was first formed, hundreds of stray animals were rounded up each day off the streets, put into cages, and thrown into the East River to drown. A couple years later, in 1894, the organization formed multiple animal shelters and advertised animal rescue throughout their city. So the first low-cost spay and neuter clinic had opened up in Los Angeles in 1970, and opening this clinic was the first step to declining euthanasia in animal shelters across the United States. Now let's consider the types of breeds and other animals that are taken into kill shelters each day. This is a picture of 3 purebred Weimaraners, and about 25% of the dogs taken into kill shelters are actually purebred. That is 1 out of every 4. And so not just dogs and cats are taken into kill shelters. Other animals that are taken into kill shelters are birds, rabbits, horses, pigs. Cats and dogs are the most common, but I've also heard stories about reptiles being taken into kill shelters and gerbils. All right. So now let's talk about the 3 most common reasons for euthanasia in the United States. 7.6 million animals are taken into kill shelters annually, and kill shelters are breeding grounds for diseases such as kennel cough and upper respiratory infection that spread rapidly, so employees must be really good about not putting their hands into animals' cages. And the cost of treating every animal's sickness would be incredibly high, so there's a list that veterinarians go through to determine what to do with that animal. They look for the adoptability of the pet, the cost and length of treatment, and their chance of recovering. The second thing they look for is aggression. They look for reactions to touching, body language, certain noises, interactions with other animals. And overpopulation is the third one, which is the most common reason for euthanasia in the United States, but it is also the most preventable. Overpopulation makes these animal shelters overcapacitated, which leads them to get rid of these animals. Basically, the unwanted litter is what they call it. All right. Now I'd like to talk about the most common and effective methods used in disposing and euthanizing animals in the United States. The first one is lethal injection. This is the most preferred method in euthanizing animals because it causes the least amount of stress for the animals and apparently for the humans. Rendering plants is also the most preferred disposal method because truckers will normally just pick up the bodies for no fee. drive to the rendering plant, drop the bodies up, and pick up their payments there. Other various methods of disposing animals are storing them in freezers and storing them in big black garbage bags, as I showed you in the beginning of my speech. And also burial and landfill is one of the most common methods used around the country, but it isn't allowed in some areas. So let's just take another look at this. About 31% of dogs are taken into kill shelters, and about 41% of cats are taken into kill shelters. We talked about the history of which animal shelters originated. My second point was talking about different age groups and different breeds and animals that are taken into kill shelters. Before deciding what to do with an animal, there's a couple of things to check for such as certain types of aggression, illness, cost of length of treatment because it can become too expensive. Lastly, I talk about the more preferred ways to dispose and euthanize animals within shelters. So now remember, every 13 seconds, an animal will have been euthanized in a kill shelter. Thank you for listening to my speech. This is my audience again. I think so. I hope so.
I was going to say the screen's supposed to turn off.
Awesome.